I want to bring in right now Graeme Wood. He's a contributing editor for The Atlantic. He's also author of a widely cited and discussed piece in this month's magazine, What ISIS Really Wants. Graeme, thanks so much for being here. So for people who haven't read your article, what does ISIS really want?
Well, what I try to say is that that ISIS has a very distinct ideology that includes plans for inexorable expansion of their state so that they can implement Sharia law and eventually have a major role in the apocalypse. So they think that there are particular signposts along the way toward the end of the world, and it's their job to fulfill and meet each of those signposts.
President Obama has been talking a lot about Islamic extremists in the last couple of days. I want you to take a listen to something he said in which he was really working hard to differentiate between Islamic extremists and Islam. Take a listen.
And we are not at war with Islam. We are at war with people who have perverted Islam. No religion is responsible for terrorism. People are responsible for violence and terrorism.
What's your take on that?
I think he's doing something that's actually very good, which is to deny the narrative that ISIS has, which is that there's a war between crusaders, namely the United States, NATO, etc., the West, and Islam. And to deny that narrative is the right thing to do. That said, Obama is not a theologian. There are no Muslims who think that what he says goes when it comes to saying whether ISIS is an authentically religious organization. So I think weighing in on theological matters when you're not a theologian and have no legitimacy in that way doesn't have that much effect, really.
Is there an Islamic basis for what ISIS does? Can it be justified by reading Islamic texts?
Well, whether it can be justified or not is a question for Muslims, and almost all of them have said no. The question of whether it is Islamically based, however, and whether it derives from this vast and diverse and contradictory tradition called Islam is not a matter of real debate. It's a matter of fact. The modes of discourse that it uses, the kinds of justification that it offers, and the ways that it talks, these all derive from the traditions of Islam and from the texts of the Quran and the Hadith. You could say that they are wrong. That's, as I say, a question for Muslims that has largely been decided by the mainstream. But that doesn't stop it from deriving from an Islamic tradition and being, in that way, an Islamic movement.
I want to get your reaction to something else the president said about the underlying causes behind some of the terrorist recruitment. Play that clip.
Fourth, we have to address the political grievances that terrorists exploit. Again, there is not a single perfect causal link, but the link is undeniable. When people are oppressed and human rights are denied, particularly along sectarian lines or ethnic lines, when dissent is silenced, it feeds violent extremism. It creates an environment that is ripe for terrorists to exploit.
Do you think the president is de-emphasizing too much the religious nature of why people join groups like ISIS and emphasizing too much the political and economic reasons?
I don't think so. I think there are political, rhetorical reasons why a president does not want to be really talking too much about whether Islam is an enemy, etc. And political things are easier to talk about for that reason. Political issues are also extremely important in explaining the rise of ISIS. To not understand, however, what their religious ideology is, it would be like fighting communism or Nazism without knowing what communism is or what Nazism is. These are things that, of course, just by knowing them, you don't defeat them. But going into battle without any awareness of the nature of the enemy is a really perilous thing to do.